Listen, please, don't call off our wedding. I regretted that I might have been a little childish after seeing his expression. However, this man who might be my future father-in-law was looking down on me, and my boyfriend wasn't doing anything to help me. I was at the brink of my patience with my boyfriend and my soon-to-be father-in-law who evaluated things based on a brand status alone. My anger had reached its limit. At the first marriage meeting, I was driven away, and in the second meeting, he scorned me as poor, looking at my coat. But as soon as they saw the tag on my coat, both of their expressions changed. My name is Jessica Smith. I'm 28 years old, and I work as a ground staff at an airport. My parents live in Italy, and they run a fashion business. Despite that, I live alone in New York. That's when I met my current boyfriend, Jacob Turner, at my favorite cafe. He was 2 years older than me and a regular customer of that cafe, like myself. As we started to see each other more frequently, he began to treat me kindly, and so I, who was never stimulated by anything on a daily basis, quickly fell in love with him. After 2 years of dating, I finally decided to marry him. Hey, Jessica, how about we go to my parents' house for a marriage meeting next week? One day, he suddenly proposed this. I was thrilled that he also considered marriage, just as I did. His father, like my own, ran a large fashion brand business, and I liked the fact that he was as globally active as my father. And true to being the son of a brand president, he too was decked out in branded clothing. I'd love to go for the marriage meeting, I responded with a smile. But he looked a bit grim as he said, but my dad, he dislikes people who seem poor. Are you sure you'll be okay? I don't mean that in a bad way. I'm not saying you're poor or anything, but it's just your appearance. I guess he meant no harm, but something about his statement felt like he was looking down on me. Are you saying there's something wrong with how I look? No, I think your uniqueness is great. How rude. I'm wearing something decent, just so I could look worthy of being Jacob's girlfriend. That's right. Ever since I started dating Jacob, I began to take more care of my fashion. Even on my days off work, I never skip makeup, and I began to take regular interest in my outfits, ranging from budget-friendly brands to high-end labels. Jacob's presence had a lot to do with this. Just walking next to him, shining brightly as he does, I would look less by comparison. His best feature undoubtedly is his looks. With his model-like physique and face and the aura he exudes, he could easily grace the pages of a fashion magazine. When it comes to work, I earn a higher income and speak multiple languages, so in terms of capabilities, I am higher. However, he has facial features that far surpass those, and I was effortlessly drawn to him. But his occasional condescending remarks bothered me. Well, Jessica, you're pretty, so I think you'll be fine, but be prepared because my dad is strict. Strict in what way? Whether you're suitable for the Turner family. Basically, whether you fit the brand image of my dad's company. So that means Dad is extremely proud of his brand, and I don't think he'll forgive anyone who tarnishes it. I won't be able to defend you on the day, so do your best. As he said that, he smiled at me, but for me, it was nothing but pressure. And then, what does he mean he won't help me? He seemed ready to abandon me without a second thought. With my feelings of unease mounting, the day of the marriage greeting came before I knew it. The house of what would be my future in-laws was a luxury high-rise apartment. What floor do they live on? The top floor. He responded nonchalantly, but from my perspective, I was shocked enough to lose my footing. No surprise there, upon researching, it was a super luxury apartment with a monthly rent of $7,000. The apartment was a 4-bedroom, spacious living room and kitchen layout. It was just a 2-minute walk to the station, and although the rent was high, the convenience was also high. Anxious, I found myself mumbling, I wonder if I'll be okay. Then he, with a slightly stiff face, said, I don't know. It seemed that his father's approval was more important to him than his own girlfriend. I wonder if it's going to be okay in a pinch. Holding on to a sliver of unease, I got on the elevator with him. When we arrived at his place, his mother was there to greet us. Seeing her, I could tell from the way she carried herself and the expensive items she wore that the Turners were a special family. My parents also run a business, so I knew right away that everything she was wearing was high-end. Welcome. Her tone quite cold. It was as if she wasn't interested in me at all. I was led to the living room where his father was already seated and waiting. Jacob, is this the woman you want to marry? Yes, her name is Jessica. She's 2 years younger than me and works as a ground crew member at the airport. After he finished introducing me, I gave a slight nod in acknowledgement. Just as I was about to introduce myself, father-in-law asked a question that caused me to frown. Jessica, how much did your entire outfit cost? The coat is from the Gap and the skirt is from Zara, so in total, it's probably around $300 or so. Upon hearing my response, father-in-law sighed heavily and began to berate Jacob. Jacob, you brought this cheap-looking woman here? Are you trying to disgrace our family name? I'm sorry, Dad. I was shocked. Not only had father-in-law just insulted me by calling me cheap, but Jacob, rather than defending me, was desperately apologizing. It was then that I realized I couldn't marry him. That's enough. We're done here. You know I'm the CEO of a luxury brand. I can't tolerate a woman with such cheap taste, father-in-law declared, dismissing me entirely, and Jacob just stood there looking dumbfounded. Our engagement was off and we started our way back home. Walking side by side, Jacob began to grumble. Didn't I tell you, don't dress according to your taste? Because of you, I was embarrassed in front of my parents. What? Why can't I even choose my own clothes? When we get married, you are not going to tell me to wear clothes only from your dad's brand, are you? Overcome with anger at father-in-law's attitude and Jacob's lack of support, my tone became harsh. Then, as if echoing my sentiments, Jacob started to get emotional too. Yes, that's right. If you dress in his clothes, you'll shine. Please, just listen to me for once. Because of you doing whatever you want, even our marriage is in danger. Then let's call off the marriage, I sharply retorted to his words. Jacob froze in his tracks, surprised by my firm response. With a tense face, he stuttered, "You're joking, right?" To which I replied, "I'm serious." Just like that, all his previous confidence evaporated, and he started to repeatedly apologize, begging, "Please, anything but calling off the wedding." Seeing his plea made me wonder if I had been a bit too harsh. So for now, I decided to observe the situation a little longer. We arranged to revisit the marriage greeting a week later, and if it didn't go well, the father-in-law threatened to break off the engagement. My thoughts aligned with his. Hey, what about this outfit for a meeting with my parents? Jacob seemed quite affected by the initial blow from the first meeting. His main concern seemed to be not upsetting his father. Clearly, his father's opinion was more significant than our impending marriage. That's why he was able to confidently suggest the same brand of clothing his father wears. I'll choose what I wear. If you're going to interfere, let's break up right here and now. Seeing his behavior, my desire to marry him was slowly fading. So as a secret weapon, I decided to call my dad. I told him everything that had happened. Fast forward to the day of the second marriage meeting. Jacob seemed nervous from the morning. As for me, I was calm. However, one difference was my outfit. The clothing I was wearing was all made in Italy, something I had requested from my dad. He runs a brand overseas and also sells it in the US. Sensing the situation was not good, my dad had someone from his American branch deliver the clothes. Since Jacob was at work when it arrived, he had no idea about it. Looking at my new coat, he had a puzzled expression but didn't say anything due to the lack of time before our scheduled meeting. On the way to his parents' house, he pleaded with me, "Please, let's just make this meeting successful, okay? You want to marry me, don't you?" The look on his face implied that I should feel honored to have the opportunity to marry him. But inside, I wasn't excited about getting married anymore. The distrust had grown too much because of everything that had happened. I hid this from him by putting on a false smile. I'll do my best. When we arrived at his parents' house, his father came to greet us this time. Apparently, my mother-in-law was out. As soon as we stepped into the house, my father-in-law started speaking. Hey, Jacob, what's the meaning of this? Didn't you promise to dress her in my brand? His pride in his brand was much greater than I'd imagined. He once told me that even a pair of socks from his brand cost more than $200. I'm sorry, Dad. Jessica insisted on choosing her outfit. Then my father-in-law let out a sigh and said, Jessica, could you please not destroy our family brand image? I mean, wearing such a cheap-looking coat." He examined my new coat closely as he spoke. That's a knockoff, isn't it? At first glance, it looks like a Louis Vuitton, but it's not. He took out his phone and started searching for something. I guess he was probably checking the price. I found it. There's a knockoff that looks just like your coat, and it's cheap too. Even if you don't wear our brand, there must be something a little better than that. My father-in-law began ruthlessly picking apart my appearance. His behavior was outrageous, and it was clear that this was no longer about a meet and greet for our marriage. Jacob remained tense in front of his father and did nothing to defend me. Well, sit down and get that $60 coat off. You look poor. He smirked as he spoke. Apparently, there was a similar product to my coat priced at $60. In reality, it's missing 3 zeros. At this point, I'd reached the end of my patience. I'm sorry, may I borrow a hanger? I tried to reach for a hanger nearby. Then my father-in-law said, for a cheap coat like that, a hanger is too good. There's a basket over there. Use that. Jacob, get it for her. He then ordered Jacob to hand me a laundry basket. He was behaving just like his father's puppet. He wouldn't say anything even though we made eye contact. However, he froze when he saw the label peeking out from my coat, which I had reluctantly placed in the basket. Dad, this coat's label, it says Prada. What? What? Both of them looked shocked. My future father-in-law, who had cavalierly labeled my coat as cheap, changed his expression as soon as he saw the tag. Oh, Jessica, why didn't you tell us earlier? You're wearing something quite impressive, father-in-law said, trying to force a smile on his face. I gave him a cold stare back, and then I spoke. About that marriage thing, let's call it off, please. They both looked surprised. What do you mean, Jessica? It's only natural, even if he's your own father, if you can't stand up for your future wife when she's being bullied, I wouldn't want to welcome you as my husband. But this is what? When I asked back, he looked down and stayed silent, not knowing what to say. Also, father-in-law, this coat is from a brand my father runs, and when I said Prada, this is a collaboration piece with Prada, and my father led the project. There are only 5 of these made in the world, and it costs $60,000. $60,000? Father-in-law reacted as if he had been struck by lightning. I later learned that the most expensive coat from father-in-law's brand costs around $12,000. Although that's quite high-end in general, it's not even close to mine. So, big brand CEOs judge people by their appearance, huh? Father-in-law was at a loss for words. To the two of them, I continued. And Jacob, don't you think you were getting a little too full of yourself just because you're the son of a CEO? Sure, you look good and you wear nice things, but what's inside doesn't match up. What are you saying? Jacob tried to argue back, but from my perspective, him getting angry was ridiculous. So you can justify it? You left me alone to take all the bullying and even pressured me to succeed the second time around. How would you feel if our roles were reversed? Well, I don't want to be hurt any more than I already have, just so you can save your pride, I said to him sternly. At that, he became quite subdued and just said, I'm sorry. Then, as Jacob turned to my father-in-law, he said, Of course, I'll approve the marriage. I was wrong. Please, calm down. Still under the misconception that he held the upper hand, I was thoroughly disgusted by his behavior. I sighed deeply, which caused my father-in-law to jolt in surprise. He looked at me nervously. Do you know the ultra-luxurious Italian brand, Ruby? Of course. They're one of the top brands worldwide. I know the CEO. My coat is from Ruby. It's a collaboration with Prada. I see. Well, the point isn't that. It's that I'm the daughter of the CEO. What? You're joking. Both of them stared at me wide-eyed. They opened and closed their mouths as if trying to speak, but no words came out. I could tell they were struggling. I wanted to tell you formally when we announced our engagement, but that didn't seem appropriate given the circumstances. So I've been disrespecting the daughter of a more prestigious brand this whole time. It seems so, Dad. Jacob, quit messing around. How did you not know this beforehand? Thanks to you, we've made fools of ourselves. Feeling cornered, my father-in-law began to blame his son. While it might have seemed like he was just shifting blame, it was apparently a serious issue for the two of them. I didn't know, okay? All I was told was that she was just a regular ground staff. My boyfriend seemed quite afraid of his father. His voice shook and he appeared terrified. Then my father-in-law suddenly changed his attitude towards me. I'm so sorry about my son. Now let me make some tea for you," father-in-law said with a forced smile that I found incredibly repulsive. "Do you always act like this, father-in-law? Judging people by their appearance and flipping your attitude when you find out their high status? Can't you judge people by anything more than their looks?" What did you say?" By this point, I'd completely given up on the idea of marrying, so I decided to say everything that was on my mind, which made my tone quite firm. As a result, the tone becomes a little stronger. When I told my father about what happened, he mentioned that he's considering acquiring your company. What? He's going to buy out my company? Yes. He said that someone who can only judge people by their fashion brand isn't fit to be the president of a major brand. Fashion brands aren't there to flaunt your status to others. They're for the wearer to enjoy. A sheen of sweat was visible on my father-in-law's face. He seemed to be beginning to grasp the gravity of the situation. He might be flaunting his status as the president of a major brand now, but being acquired would be a different story. "Dad, if we're acquired now, we're screwed, right? We don't have the funds to resist, do we?" Jacob asked his father with a voice full of disappointment. It seemed he had some knowledge of the company's financial situation. As I found out later, my father-in-law's company was barely managing to stay profitable, and their situation was always precarious. One significant bump, and they could easily plummet into the red. That bump seemed to have come in the form of an acquisition. My father always follows through when he says he will, and he raised me to do the same, so as I've already said, I won't be marrying. "Jessica, I'm sorry," Jacob said with tears in his eyes. I barely gave him a glance. I'd never thought that the man I once thought was cool could make such a pathetic face. And my father-in-law, "Jessica, I'm really sorry. Could you please reconsider the acquisition?" he begged. It's not like I had the final say, but my father-in-law was groveling to me, who he had been looking down on just moments ago. His misplaced pride disgusted me, and I simply said, "That's up to my father." When all hope was lost, my father-in-law turned pale and fell to his knees, ignoring the two despairing men. I left my father-in-law's house. After that day, I lost all contact with Jacob. When I reported back to my father, he informed me that the acquisition was already underway. My father has always been a gentle and kind man who treats everyone equally. But when my father, always a calm man, found out that his little girl had been hurt, he became a different person. Apparently, he had always had his eye on the acquisition of my ex-father-in-law's company, just waiting for the right time. Yet the moment he learned that the man who looked down on me for being poor was the CEO of the company he was considering acquiring, his decision was made. All doubt had vanished, he said. In the acquisition, my father promised to secure the conditions of all employees, except for the CEO. This meant that my ex-father-in-law's fate was entirely in my father's hands. As for what happened to those two afterwards, I have no idea. However, I felt a sense of relief when I saw the breaking news on the TV reporting that Ruby Corp, a big American fashion brand, had acquired a leading fashion brand. The news was interviewing my ex-father-in-law during the acquisition. He looked utterly worn out, the spark gone from his eyes. My ex-father-in-law and ex-boyfriend, who both prioritized status above all else in marriage, likely unable to appreciate a person's inner value. I strongly believe that a CEO should be like my father, someone who doesn't judge solely by appearances but carefully evaluates the personality. I learned a deep lesson this time around, one that applies not only to branded goods but to all things in life.
My name is Melissa. I'm 26 years old and preparing for my homecoming birth. If there's a grandchild, that kind of daughter-in-law can be discarded. While packing, I overheard my mother-in-law bad-mouthing me to my husband. She's inconsiderate, not cute, doesn't bring in money, has no redeeming features. You don't need someone like that anymore. She's so annoying. That's what I wanted to say back to her, but I'm heavily pregnant. Considering my notoriously harsh mother-in-law, if I lashed out, I'd probably get an even worse response. Ignoring the negativity for the sake of prenatal care, I decided it's best to quickly switch gears and enjoy my time. I convinced myself of this and diligently got back to packing. Mama will do her best, so come out healthy, okay? I was excited to meet my adorable baby soon, so during my homecoming period, I energetically took walks and spoke to my belly every day. During this homecoming period, I could spend my time in a very relaxed mood. My mother-in-law, who comes without notice, overstays her welcome, criticizes the food, complains about the nursery I've prepared for the baby, just keeps complaining about anything and everything. Eventually, the long-awaited baby was born safely, and raising her in my cheerful childhood home, even though it was busy, was a lot of fun. Well, I'll be back next weekend. I reported this to my husband over the phone, but I honestly wanted to stay at home a bit longer. But I can't be spoiled forever, and I'm worried about our own home. Since my husband is not interested in housework, I wondered if the house might be a mess. This is going to be your home, Lisa. We need to get back and make it a comfortable environment. As she filled her belly and slept peacefully in my arms, I smiled back at my child. I'm back! Brian? I had a lot of luggage and I pressed the doorbell, hoping someone would open it for me, but there was no response, so I had no choice but to struggle to unlock the door and enter the house, but there was no sign of anyone. I had told him I would be back at this time. As I headed to the living room with that thought, I was frozen in shock by the sight that greeted me. What is this? The room was so cluttered, there was no place to step. It's not just a mess because no one has cleaned. At a glance, it seems intentionally made messy, rather like things had been flung around randomly. Could it be a burglary? Scared, I rushed out of the house. Hello? Is this the police? I just came back from my homecoming birth and my house is a mess. While I was trembling and making the call, my well-slept child began to fuss and I was in a panic. A familiar neighbor who was passing by became concerned for us and let us rest in their house for the time being. The neighbor was able to calm my shaking with fear and surprise, and after my daughter drank some milk, she fell asleep again. Before long, I heard the sirens of the police cars, and I returned to my house accompanied by my neighbor. The front door was locked. I got scared seeing the living room and haven't checked the other rooms. When I explained, the police praised me for my good judgment. I learned that when a burglary occurs, it's dangerous to encounter the intruder. It's safer to go outside and wait for the police, rather than checking on your own. I had been in such a rush that I didn't even consider the possibility of running into the burglar. But upon imagining it, I was filled with fear. What? What's this? Why? The police? The shrill voice echoed when I had just finished explaining the situation. Oh, it's a terrible situation, mother-in-law. Our house is in a complete mess. We suspect a burglary, and the police are here to investigate. Before I could finish my sentence, I felt a harsh slap across my cheek, which made my vision sway. Amidst the commotion of the neighbors and police, I instinctively held my stinging cheek, while my mother-in-law, her face flaming red, shouted loudly, "You shameless woman! How dare you do this? A burglary, you say? And to call the police? What were you thinking?" Huh? I was stunned, unable to comprehend the fury of my mother-in-law, coupled with the throbbing pain in my cheek. A neighbor stepped in to mediate, telling her that calling the police is not something to be ashamed of, and that investigating is the police's job, but she wouldn't listen. Really, you're so irresponsible. You might be home for childbirth or whatever, but you left my dear Brian alone and went back to your parents' house. You're nothing more than useless if you're not home doing housework. And what's more, the moment you return, you create a police commotion? You're indeed an outstanding wife. Despite everyone around explaining that it wasn't my fault, she wouldn't listen. I was trying to get my head around it when a thought struck me. Even though we may have been burgled, you're not concerned about any losses? And besides, it's the first time you're seeing your grandchild, yet you don't seem interested. Why? Everyone around me nodded in agreement with my words. That's because... It's not time for that! How dare you blame me without even apologizing? My mother-in-law ignored my question completely, insisting on her point. Mom? What's going on? Brian, my husband, cut into the argument, seemingly relaxed. Brian! You see, listen to this. It's terrible! The appearance of her beloved son put a gleeful expression on my mother-in-law's face. Melissa seems to have called the police. Huh? Why? She's been saying there's been a burglary. There's no way that could be true. Brian, please tell her not to behave so absurdly. Is that so? Hey, Melissa, maybe you understood about the burglary? It's causing a nuisance to the neighbors, you know. The police are also busy, so let's send them home soon. What? I was staggered, but for a different reason this time. Not only my hostile mother-in-law, but also my husband Brian. I couldn't believe he'd say such a thing. Wait, Brian, our house is in a mess. The police are still investigating. We don't know if it was a burglary yet, but the state of the house is weird. We're about to check if anything is missing and file a report. No way! That's out of the question. Brian cut me off with a loud voice. But why? The conversation was not making any sense. I was at a loss, and tears started to well up in my eyes. I came back here, and there was no one, and the room was a mess. I didn't know what happened, and I was scared. I couldn't hold back my sobs. A neighbor was comforting me, and their warmth made me cry even more. Yet both my mother-in-law and husband in front of me seemed annoyed and simply stared at me. Why won't you understand? My heartache seemed to have reached my daughter, who was asleep, as she started crying too. This only irritated my mother-in-law and husband even more. With the kindness of the neighbors and the concerned look of the police, I ended up staying over at a neighbor's house that night. Stolen things? I don't know. Melissa's just making a fuss. Let's go inside. Yeah, Melissa, cool your head off. My mother-in-law and husband seemed not to care about the mess and quickly went inside after the police finished their investigation. I didn't think he was that kind of person. Standing in front of the closed door, I remembered my husband's words. My mom still thinks I'm a kid, and it's super annoying. I generally go along with her just to avoid conflict, but it's really a bother. Even though he used to say such things. However, I couldn't just stand there forever. After apologizing over and over, I ended up spending the night at my neighbor's house. Mom has to be strong. I'll do my best. To my daughter, who was finally falling asleep despite being fussy, I said this. The next day, when I headed home, my mother-in-law and husband were there. Mother-in-law, did you actually sleep here? Even with everything in such a state. The living room was somewhat cleared for them to sit, but it looked no different from the day before. I had checked the other rooms with the police, and it seemed as if stuff had been dumped out of the storage in all of them. The sight was the same everywhere. Despite constantly complaining about my cleaning, my mother-in-law had actually stayed in the house in that state. And she hadn't started cleaning or anything. She just sat there, looking grumpy. What do you mean, did you actually? I felt sorry for Brian, who was left by his wife, so I couldn't go home. Her words got to me, and I retorted, It's not that I left, it's that you didn't listen to what I was saying. What? What a way to talk! My mother-in-law's face quickly turned into one of anger. Brian cut in from the side. Also, stop making a fuss about a burglary. Has your head cooled off? He said it in a way that was annoying, and I felt something snap inside of me. That's right. It's not like we were burgled, right? I was surprised at how low my voice sounded, but Brian didn't respond to my angry tone. He just smirked a bit. Yeah, finally understood? That's right, you were overreacting about the burglary. Anyway, start cleaning. Brian said it as if it was someone else's problem, and my mother-in-law also raised her chin in a triumphant way. Housework and childcare are a wife's job, aren't they? My mother-in-law said this in a sickeningly sweet voice, as if talking to a pet. What? I'm not cleaning up. It's your mess, so you should clean it up. I shrugged at the two of them looking down on me. What? Excuse me? As expected, they didn't seem to like my response. You're such a nasty wife. Get moving already. My mother-in-law snapped at me, huffing and puffing. What a pain. My husband grimaced. In front of them, I handed them the divorce papers I had received and filled out first thing in the morning. I want a divorce. Huh? My husband blinked, looking taken aback. That's right, I want a divorce. Right now. At that, my mother-in-law snatched the divorce papers and dramatically moaned. Oh, poor Brian! How terrible to be treated like this! As she cradled my husband's head. Just a big baby, aren't you? I had tried to hold my tongue, but my true feelings slipped out. What did you say? Melissa, you? The two of them were so angry, they seemed to be on the verge of bursting. Of course, they weren't going to take my words sitting down, but I wasn't going to back down either. Did you not hear me, or can you not understand, big baby Brian? Divorce! Here are the papers, please sign them right away. I knew it was petty. I knew I shouldn't sink to their level. But at that point, I didn't care. Enough with the jokes. Bow down. Apologize. Angry, they threw me to the ground, pressing me to the floor. Apologize now. Brian's strength made it hard to breathe, and my eyes filled with tears. Then, Melissa! Get your hands off my daughter! My saviors were my parents, who had come running to my aid. Behind them, I saw the friendly officer from the previous day. Coughing and gasping for air, I was relieved and my strength left me. What are you doing, barging in here like this? Get out, now! My mother-in-law and husband were being restrained by the officer, writhing and struggling. It's no use, you've been caught in the act of assault. With help from my father, I stood up and said with a smile to the two struggling people, Actually, I only asked the officer to come and check on the situation from yesterday. I never imagined you'd assault me. What the hell is going on? My husband growled, but I wasn't scared anymore. We have a baby monitor camera installed in this house for our little Lisa. It's a live stream camera. It couldn't record the person who trashed the room, but... As I said that, both of them visibly relaxed. Huh? So what? It's a live camera, I told you. Right now, the kind neighbor who helped us yesterday is watching over this room. They listened to your conversation yesterday, along with a lot of people at the police station. My parents were watching too. Yes, after my mother-in-law and husband disappeared behind the door yesterday, I started checking the baby monitor camera. The police suspected that this whole break-in thing seemed fishy, perhaps even staged. Not just my mother-in-law, but my husband too might be involved, they said. Unfortunately, they hit the nail on the head. Before I got home, you two messed up the room on purpose, then came back pretending to be surprised, trying to blame me. You were planning to get an apology payment from my parents by saying they couldn't stand a daughter-in-law who would do something so unbelievable. You guys didn't need a daughter-in-law because the baby wasn't a boy. You wanted to kick out an unnecessary daughter-in-law and get a new one, right? What on earth is an affair approved by the mother-in-law? I finished saying everything in one breath, and everyone else in the room was staring at them with cold eyes. It must be some kind of mistake. Huh? No way, I wouldn't cheat. Huh. Melissa? Do you still have more to say? This nonsense. Stop! Mother-in-law, who for a moment forgot her position and started to get angry, was not forgiven by those around her. I also refuse to be told if I'm needed or not, for such an unreasonable reason. I don't need a family that doesn't ask at all about how the baby is doing since I arrived today. It's not normal for a neighbor who's looking after her to be more loving to my daughter. I'm going back to my parents' house. Of course, I'll divorce, and I won't give up custody. As a result, it worked out just as you wanted. No, wait a minute. Police station? I don't want to go. Let go! I don't want to! Both of them made a fuss as they were taken away by the police. After that, my mother-in-law and husband became infamous in the neighborhood. Of course, it's a bad reputation. They tried to improve it by giving me a divorce settlement, but no good rumors spread at all. Well, of course, no matter how loudly they say, "We paid it!" no one would believe it. I went back to my parents' house, and I'm raising my daughter with them. I found a job through an acquaintance's introduction. Honestly, I'm not without worries, and it's hard, but when I look at my daughter's face, I feel like I can do my best. I'll work hard to raise Lisa straight, so she doesn't resemble her father.
I am Kathy, a 55-year-old woman. A few years ago, my husband passed away due to a sudden illness, and now I live alone. I have 2 children, but both are married and do not live with me. My son has his own family but lives overseas, so I rarely see him, and I don't get to see my daughter much since she got married. I do call my children occasionally, but I've been somewhat worried about my daughter. She always sounds lifeless, and I wondered if she was being mistreated at her in-laws' place. Since getting married, my daughter has been living with her husband's parents, that is, at her in-laws' house. I've never been mistreated by my in-laws myself, but I have friends who have, so I am concerned. Hello, Sarah, are you okay? I sent a package to you recently. Did you receive it? Thank you. Sorry for contacting you late. I've been quite busy. Well, as long as you got it. But Sarah, you sound like you're not doing well. Are you okay over there? Yes, I'm fine. Sorry for making you worry, Mom. Sarah's voice was somewhat faint, almost ghost-like. Come to think of it, I haven't seen her in a while, so I can't confirm her well-being. I became anxious, wondering if she's eating properly or if she's getting enough sleep. As a parent, no matter how old you are, you worry about your children. Even if they are married and have their own family, I think that doesn't change. My late mother worried about me until the very end, so I thought it was normal for me to be concerned. I worry about Sarah to the extent that it's not overprotective or intrusive, but I worry she'll be annoyed. Well, Sarah isn't the type to say such things, so I reached out to her only once in a while. One day, I was going about my regular chores and work just as usual. It was already 8 p.m., and I was thinking about having a cup of tea before heating up the bathtub. That's when the doorbell rang. I wondered who it could be at this hour, and when I opened the door, it was Sarah. She looked more worn out than the last time I saw her. Her hair was a mess and her cheeks were gaunt, and her wrists visible from her sweater had become very thin, like withered branches. I panicked, wondering why Sarah had ended up like this. Sarah, what happened? Why are you here at this time? And what's with your look? Actually, I haven't been able to buy a single new piece of clothing. What? Really? All the money I saved up from the time I was single, and even my full earning from my current part-time job, gets taken away. So I can't buy clothes for myself, and even when I ask my husband, he won't buy them for me. I see. That's why she's wearing such a tattered sweater and coat. They're covered in lint with holes everywhere. Normally, a husband would feel bad seeing his wife dressed like this, but apparently her husband doesn't care. And what does she mean by all of her part-time pay is confiscated? After Sarah got married, she quit her full-time job and started teaching part-time at a tutoring school near her in-laws' place. Seizing her paycheck, that's crossing the line. Also, they told me to keep the budget for groceries under $35. What? That's ridiculous. If I were to go over $35, they threatened to hurt me. I overspent by $5 today and got yelled at by my husband and mother-in-law. That's terrible. Mom, I have a favor to ask. I want to stay somewhere else tonight. Can you lend me $50 for a motel? I'm sure my husband will calm down by tomorrow, and I just want to stay somewhere else tonight. Honey, you don't need to stay at a motel. What a waste of money. And your face is burning red. You probably got a fever. Yeah, I caught a cold. Why don't you stay here for a while? I can take care of you. Really? Thank you. Sarah's face brightened up. I prepared some more milk for Sarah and let her use my spare room. I had some pajamas that fit her, so I handed them to her and told her to change. She seemed really worn out from cold and fell asleep almost immediately after taking some medicine. Well, it's a relief that it's nothing too serious, but why did it have to come down to this? Kathy said she would get in trouble if she didn't keep their monthly grocery expense under $35, but that's impossible. They're not farmers. They can't grow and get their own vegetables and fruits to keep their budget that low. It made me wonder if they had some sense of basic living expenses. With inflation, prices of goods have been rising, and there's no way $35 is enough for Sarah, her husband, and her in-laws. I trembled with rage thinking about their unreasonable demands and the fact that they're confiscating all of Sarah's part-time pay. The next morning, Sarah got up looking sluggish, but her fever seemed to have gone down a bit. I made her see a doctor just in case, but it turned out to be a common cold. I was relieved it wasn't anything serious. Well, at least it's just a cold, not some troublesome disease. Yeah, there's been a flu going around recently too. But why did they start confiscating your part-time pay? Actually, my mother-in-law keeps insisting that she needs money. Huh? At first, she said she didn't have enough funds for retirement, giving several reasons, but something feels off. Packages of huge boxes are constantly being delivered to our house, and she doesn't show me what's inside. What? I'm starting to suspect that she's buying something suspicious. She told me it's for her retirement, but I think she's lying. That's concerning. I too started to think that Sarah's mother-in-law, Sabrina, must be buying something sketchy. Sarah hasn't seen what's inside these frequently delivered packages, but she says they're definitely suspicious. They arrive in abundance from overseas, so I guess her part-time earnings are being spent on that. Taking Kathy's part-time wages to buy whatever she wants is truly wicked. What in the world is her in-laws buying in such quantities anyway? I started to feel scared. Then one day, I decided to go out for some tea with my friend. Sarah recovered from her cold, so she said she was just going to relax at home and read a book. After having tea with my friend, I decided to report my daughter's situation to the police. Then, about 2 hours later, Sarah's in-laws showed up. Sarah's husband was away on a business trip abroad, but the expressions on his parents' face were demonic. Sarah's mother-in-law, Sabrina, turned beet red, while her father-in-law, Robert, glared. "You're the one who reported us to the police, aren't you?" "Yes, that's correct." "I'm sure Sarah must have secretly looked into the packages and told you about it, right, honey?"
"That's right. It must be because of this chick that the cops are onto us."
"No, my daughter said she didn't look inside." "I can't believe that. I'm sure she's trying to set us up. What a wicked daughter-in-law, being nasty and disrespecting her in-laws."
"That's right. A daughter-in-law should value her in-laws, and yet this woman just ran out of the house and even ignored our calls. There's no point hiding here."
"But I had no idea what my husband would do to me if I didn't run away." "What? You're blaming our son now? It's your fault for overspending on groceries. Stop with the excuses."
"That's right. Shut up now. Just how many times do we have to tell you that we only have light meals to keep it healthy, so $35 for groceries should be enough."
Light meals?
Yes, exactly. Light meals are the best for us humans. Eating luxurious meals can lead to gout or lifestyle diseases, which is why our model is to have light and simple meals only. So $35 is indeed enough for groceries.
Well, because of all that nonsense, my daughter has become as thin as a rail. Robert always spoke as if eating light meals was a shortcut to good health, but when Sarah first came home, she was clearly malnourished. Her shiny hair was now dry, so was her face, and her skin was peeling off. What's worse, she was so skinny that she looked like a skeleton. She might have gained a little weight now, but no one can possibly gain 20 pounds in a month, no matter how hard they try. Sure, there might be some who can, but Sarah isn't a big eater, so she probably only gains about 5 pounds max. And yet, she's wasting $35 like that. She's such an incompetent daughter-in-law. Have you ever taught her how to manage household expenses? This tells a lot about the way you raised her.
Oh, look who's talking. What did you say?
Well, all that talk about light meals is just a lie, isn't it? You two have been secretly feasting on good food, haven't you? Well... A friend of mine mentioned that she saw you guys shopping for expensive ingredients at the upscale supermarket Whole Foods. That's... And apparently you were also buying quality liqueur. Were you hiding it to drink somewhere else?
Well, that's...
They were clearly taken aback, looking rather flustered. Sweat was trickling down their faces, and they were huffing and puffing as they wiped it off. So, what's your point? Reporting us to the police just because we secretly enjoy good food without our daughter-in-law? Have you lost your mind, Kathy? Haha.
Exactly. It's not a big deal, right? We also want to spoil ourselves once in a while. We've been eating simple and light meals for so long.
Oh, is that so? But I suppose all this luxury is thanks to the money you've made through your sketchy business. What?
Huh?
Don't you guys sell Japanese pharmaceutical products on eBay? About that, it seems that it's against the site's policy for individuals to sell pharmaceutical products. I don't really use online flea markets much, so I wasn't aware, but isn't that against the Pharmaceutical Affairs Law?
Well,
So I decided to report it. It seems you were selling stuff like Dream Diet Pills. But how do you know? Oh, that friend of mine was almost sold to get your products. She's a bit chubby, and when she was walking down the street, she ran into you and got asked to try the Dream Diet Pills and to buy them from your online store. Oh, that time. My friend is indeed a bit chubby, but she was offended that someone even more overweight would say something like that to her, haha. Well, Sabrina, you are indeed quite huge, so... What? What do you mean? Where am I huge? My body's glamorous. Huh, glamorous. Also, Robert, you've got a bit of a belly too. You must be eating and drinking some pretty good stuff. Using our daughter's part-time earnings to buy luxurious produce at the supermarket and profiting off your diet pills to eat even better.
this is not fat. It's all muscles.
Huh?
I got that hard, tight six-pack, right, dear?
Yes, that's right. Robert is definitely not overweight, and I still turn heads because I have a nice body too, haha. Sabrina snorted and bragged how she was still considered a good-looking lady. She was very confident in herself, wearing a tight miniskirt. Even in the middle of winter, she didn't wear stockings. I wondered if her bare legs got cold. At that moment, the daughter spoke. Well, you use that glamorous body of yours to get guys, right? Haha. Huh? The other day, I went to the doctor because I had a cold. There was an OBGYN next door, and I saw you going in with a young man, haha. Hey, that? There's a reason for that. Do you mean in your 50s you've had a child with a young man, or did you catch a disease? Oh my. That's not it, shut up.
You even got that far with some random guy. Are you pregnant or sick? Which is it?
I'm sick.
What the hell? No wonder I've been feeling off. It's your fault.
I'm sorry, I was just with him for fun. It's not my fault, the guy just wouldn't leave me. Huh, you seem to be having a great time. You guys even looked like a sweet couple, holding hands and going into the hospital. And it was you who was all excited, talking about, let's go dine at a restaurant after this, and we'll go on a Ferris wheel too, haha. Shush, don't talk any more than this. I cannot forgive you for using all of my earnings and the fact that you guys were eating great outside home. Also reselling the contents of that strange package, breaking the law, terrible. Well, needless to say, having an affair is awful too, haha. Ah!
Sabrina, everything's ruined because of you.
Huh, father-in-law, you were selling stuff out too. I know you guys were being sneaky, staying up at night.
No, I was only running a business. I wasn't having an affair. I'm clearly innocent.
No, what are you talking about? You've been a criminal since the moment you violated the law. You're far from innocent. My daughter has grown tougher now and took a firm stand against them. Sabrina was sobbing uncontrollably and Robert kept yelling. It was a disaster. Even though we were in our house, they were so loud that our neighbors came out and it turned into a gawking spectacle. They yelled at me, saying they were being embarrassed, but it wasn't my fault. For now, my daughter's planning on divorcing your son. Given that she was abused, she'll probably sue him for emotional distress and seek compensation. That's right, I will seek compensation from my husband. Also, please return all my part-time earnings that you guys took away. But...
That's...
I said give it back. Don't you dare underestimate me. Did you think I was some slave who would just obey everything? I'm not afraid of you anymore. I don't care what happens. Just give it back. Yes, I'm sorry.
I was wrong. I apologize.
Our usually soft-spoken daughter raised her voice, causing them to hastily bow down an apology. It seemed as if we were bullying them, and I wished my daughter would stop yelling at them, but I guess it serves them right after all. In the end, they were penalized for their crimes, it seems. Later, Sabrina and Robert got divorced, but it turns out Sabrina had not only contracted a disease, but was also pregnant in her 50s. Even I was taken aback by this. She of course had to pay alimony to Robert. Since then, Sabrina planned on starting over with her lover, but got abandoned by him. Even when I heard this, she meant nothing to me, so I didn't care at all. My daughter also got divorced and receives compensation from her ex-husband. My daughter didn't have children yet, so I thought it was good that she was able to divorce before having any. Rumors spread in our neighborhood that my daughter ran away after she was mistreated by her husband. It seems that the rumor also got to his workplace. From what I've heard, it became uncomfortable to stay at his workplace, so he resigned on his own. I don't know what happened to him after that, but he's probably staying with his father, Robert. I am now living together with my daughter, but we are not financially struggling. My daughter works as an online tutor, and I have been working from home for a while now, so we make a decent living. My daughter has been putting on some weight and getting healthier. Seeing this, I am truly relieved. Have you forgotten that you're living rent-free thanks to your husband? Sneers my sister-in-law. I don't need your input. Show me my room now. She just got divorced and moved into our house. My husband inviting her over, what a terrible decision. I'm going to make this self-centered duo pay for this. My name is Sophia. I've been living with my husband since we got married. My husband Sam is an engineer, and since he can work from home, we moved to a small town near my childhood home after we got married. Life in the countryside has its inconveniences, but the people are kind, and the environment is nice and comfortable. Sam, who grew up in a big city, seemed to adapt to country life.
The people here are all so nice. It's really heartwarming.
I was pleased to hear Sam say that. Sam commutes to the head office in New York City once every month. While there, he also visits his family in the city and updates them on our life. My parents are big landlords in this town. My parents, my brother, and his wife live in our family home. My brother and sister-in-law are helpful country folks. They would often bring food and help us out. Sam and I don't have children yet, but seeing my brother's family makes us want to have our own soon. But it seems like we'll have to wait a little longer for that. Sam and I had a peaceful life, but there were things we disagreed on. One of them was about having children.
I'm not quite ready yet.
Sam said that, but I wanted to have a baby as soon as possible. We began to feel some distance growing between us. We got married later in life. Sam might be fine with waiting, but me being a woman, time's ticking on my biological clock. Sam, I want to have a baby soon. But Sam would just say,
work is busy now. We can wait a bit more.
But when is a bit more exactly? I confronted Sam with a slightly strong tone, but his response remained vague.
I'll bring it up when I'm ready, so you keep quiet.
Perhaps due to stress from work, his attitude towards me has grown cold. Fine, that's all I could say. Consequently, our marital relations dwindled and a year went by. Then one day, Sam suddenly said,
my sister's getting divorced.
I recalled that his sister had been married for around 2 years and lived in New York. But for him to bring up his sister's divorce so casually, I wondered why.
That's why she'll be moving into our house.
I couldn't quite understand what Sam was saying at first. Wait, what do you mean? With a baffled look, Sam clarified,
my sister's getting divorced, so she's moving into our house. She'll be moving in next week, so be ready.
Apparently, things had already been decided without my input. Don't just make decisions on your own. Despite my protest, Sam remained undeterred.
What? She's my sister. She's practically your family too. I thought you'd be more accepting. You're much more cold-hearted than I thought.
Sam started berating me. What's with that attitude? I'm just saying it's wrong to decide things on your own. I desperately resisted, but Sam gave me a scornful look. At the beginning of our marriage, Sam was not such an arrogant person. I guess living leisurely in this countryside and being adored by everyone, he must have gotten carried away. I had noticed the change subtly, but I couldn't bring myself to confront him directly. But I never expected him to become so self-centered. I can't live with your sister. Please ask her to reconsider this. I firmly stood my ground and headed to my room, but Sam snapped back.
Don't you dare say you can't live with my sister. I won't accept that.
He grabbed me by the arm and yelled. To be honest, I never liked his sister Emily. Emily was from a city. She was one of those stereotypical women with a condescending attitude. Her husband was a high-ranking executive at a major corporation, so I guess that made her quite arrogant too. Well, Sophia dear, it's been a while. How's life in the plain, rural countryside? We didn't see each other often, but whenever we did, she always looked down on me. Aunt Emily was always boasting about her husband. My husband is an elite at a large corporation. You guys get to enjoy a slow-paced life in the country. How nice. I didn't want to be intimidated by her sarcasm. Yes, thanks to you, we're enjoying our fulfilling days. When I said that, Emily, who always had to one-up others, got riled up. Well, I saw it coming. You can get by with a low income in the countryside. Living in the city like us, it's impossible for you guys, right? Emily snapped. I wanted to snap back at her right then and there, but I suppressed my feelings and calmly responded. Well, I think we earn quite a lot, don't you think? But I agree the level of satisfaction of life in the countryside is far different from living in a city. Emily was momentarily at a loss for words, but she was quick to respond. Is that so? Enjoy your penny-pinching life then. She really has some issues. I've never met anyone like her before. If I had to live with my sister-in-law, I wouldn't be able to take it. I had to prevent this no matter what. But since then, no matter how I tried to persuade Sam, he wouldn't listen. Just 2 days before his sister was due to move in, I got a call from her. I expected her to be rude as usual, but I had to answer. Hello? When I answered in a puzzled tone, Emily seemed annoyed. What's with that gloomy voice? It's rude, especially when I've taken the time to call you. Emily was angry, as I had expected. You've heard from Sam that I'm moving in, haven't you? You better take good care of me. After all, you've been lazing around all this time, so it should be easy for you, right? I'll be disappointed if you don't listen to me. Emily wouldn't stop rattling, and her attitude wasn't right, coming from someone who is about to be dependent on others. Emily, I heard you're getting a divorce and coming to stay here? I said with a hint of sarcasm, but Emily herself seemed unfazed. Huh? So what? People get divorced all the time, don't they? I got bored with my married life, so I thought I might as well experience a bit of country life. You have a problem with that? She responded without missing a beat with her aggressive stance. But I didn't give you permission to come to our house, you know. When I took a firm stance, Emily laughed on the other end of the phone. Huh? Why would you have a say? This is Sam's house, right? You're aware that Sam's the one paying rent, aren't you? I knew it. Emily still believes that our house is under Sam's name. I decided to put her and Sam, who knows nothing, in their places. Then, on the promised day, Emily showed up to our house. Well, here I am. With an entitled stride, she quickly began to unload her luggage as soon as she entered the doorway. Sophia, quit spacing out and show me my room. My sister-in-law is self-centered and incredibly arrogant. I can't believe she managed to hold down a job in our society with an attitude like this. But frustratingly enough, Emily has a greater academic qualification than I do and was working in a major corporation. She seems to have quit her job when she got married, but apparently she still has offers from various companies. She probably thinks she can get back to work anytime.
Sorry for the trouble, sis. Sophia, go show her the room already,
Sam said. All right, don't rush. I know your bags are heavy, so you can go ahead to the living room. With that, I let Sam and Emily go to the living room first. When I told them I'd prepare some tea, Emily seemed to accept my welcome and followed me into the room. After serving them tea, I brought up our main subject. Emily, I know it's tough after a long trip, but you can't stay here. What are you talking about, Sophia? Emily wasn't taking it seriously. This house is Sam's, isn't it? He's the one paying rent. Have you forgotten? When Emily said that, Sam also took a stand.
That's right, you don't have any say in this, do you? This is my house, after all.
Sam and Emily, brother and sister, seemed so confident with their statement, but I wondered how long that would last. You probably don't know this, but I inherited this house from my parents. Their expressions changed in an instant. However, Emily, my sister-in-law, was quick to retort. Sophia, darling, you don't have to lie just because you don't want to live with me. She apparently believed that I was lying. I'm not lying, I calmly replied.
How can I believe that you inherited this house from your parents when I'm the one that's been paying rent? You'd think we would let such lies would fly by.
Sam backed up Emily. They both started pressing up on me, but I was unfazed as I saw this coming. Could you two be quiet for a moment? I asked them to hold their tongues. Sam, you haven't been paying rent. What you've been paying me every month is just the cost of living. Sam seemed to be unable to grasp what I was saying.
Huh? Why? That's not possible.
The fact is, Sam was not paying rent, and I had kept it a secret from him. My parents had gifted us this house and the land it stands on, and the topic of rent never came up. Sam was just mistaken. Sam, it's true that I asked you $1,000 a month, but there's no rent included in that. Sam started to panic.
Huh? We live in a remote countryside. Why would it cost so much?
Just because we live in the countryside doesn't mean there aren't any expenses, you know. You probably never realized it. We've been able to live off just the amount only because we don't have to pay for rent. I sighed as I said that, and Sam got enraged.
That's your fault for not saying so, but there's no reason for you to refuse to live with Emily.
Sam stubbornly kept arguing. It's no use. I had no choice but to bring out the documents. Look at this. The owner of this house is me. Do you see it? You pretty much left all the paperwork for moving to me, didn't you? You didn't even bother to check whose name the house was signed under, and you just assumed on your own that the money you gave me each month included rent, didn't you? Upon hearing my assertive tone, Sam was left speechless.
But how?
The documents clearly listed my name. So it's about time you kick your sister out. However, Emily was quick to fight back. What on earth are you talking about? I don't care if you inherited this house from your parents or whatever. I'm your family too, you know. I've never met a woman as cold-hearted as you. While observing Emily's rattling with a cold gaze, I said, When did I ever consider you my family? Emily, you've always belittled me, calling me a hick or accusing me of being overly dependent on Sam. You never even expressed me a hint of gratitude for letting you stay here. Do you really think I would want someone like you in my house? I took out all my pent-up anger on her. Emily finally seemed to understand her place. Turning back to Sam, I reiterated, Sam, you understand that this house is mine, right? Upon hearing this, Sam trembled with rage.
This isn't fair. You should have told us before Emily moved in. Why are you saying all this now?
You two were making all sorts of decisions without consulting me, right? So I did just the same. Any problem with that? With this self-centered pair of siblings, I had to hit them hard with the reality. The one who seemed most flustered by this reveal was Emily. Sam, what are we going to do? I'll have nowhere to live at this rate. It appears that since her divorce, Emily had left her previous residence and no longer had a home to return to in New York. Why don't you just go to your parents' place? She doesn't even have to be at my house. That's what I thought, but it seemed they had their own circumstances. My parents are already set to move into a retirement home. It seemed they had sold off their family home completely, which is why she wanted to move into her brother's place, but I'm not letting that happen. That's not my headache, so please leave. If you still want Emily to stay here, Sam, you should leave too.
What?
He should have seen it coming. After all, this is my house. Even while Sam was hopelessly looking down, Emily continued to yell at him. It's your fault. If I get kicked out, I'll have nowhere to go because you didn't have things in order.
I know, so shut up.
Sam finally snapped at Emily, and the two started to argue fiercely. They were a truly bothersome pair. Can you two keep it down? You're disturbing the neighbors. When I urged them both to leave, Sam clung on.
Sophia, I got it. I'll kick Emily out. Just let me stay here.
What? Wait a minute, Sam. What are you talking about? Emily was taken aback. Ignoring Emily, Sam forcefully sent her away. Sam was now begging me on his knees while I looked down at him confidently. You think begging will make me forgive you?
I'm really sorry. I am.
I had no intention of forgiving Sam. My discontent with Sam wasn't just over Emily. You know, you've never really been here for me, have you? Sam averted his eyes. You're always too busy with work. You never even make time to talk things out with me. I can't keep up this marriage anymore. With that, I handed Sam the signed divorce papers.
Wait, just give me a chance to think this over.
Sam didn't want to lose this life, but I had no intention of showing him mercy. Just get out already. When I coldly told him off, Sam retorted.
You've got to be kidding me. Just because this is your house doesn't mean you can do however you please.
I couldn't stand hearing such things from Sam, who tried to let Emily stay without my approval. Please don't talk about me as if you're any better. I left him with that and returned to my room, leaving the divorce papers behind. After that, Sam and I finalized our divorce. According to a mutual acquaintance, Sam and Emily returned to New York, but they seem to be having a tough time. Well, karma's getting back at them because they've always been self-centered. I can only hope they learn from their hardships. As for me, I'm here enjoying a fulfilling life in my rural home.